Welcome everyone, Costin here with the class guide for XCOM 2, how to level up your characters, what kind of gear you should go for, what kind of talents you should go for, what kind of items to use on them. This is just before the final mission on Legend Iron Man, and I've leveled every single class to Colonel level, with the exception of the Psi Ops, which you don't level normally. You know, if you look at this guy and you look at his abilities, right? It doesn't, the Psi Operative doesn't work as everyone else. You unlock abilities randomly. You pick between one of three abilities. It doesn't matter what tier it is. Some abilities take longer than others. Some are more useful than others. And you also get, as far as I understand, at the initial level, you get a random ability from a pool of abilities. So it's hard to really make certain decisions, with Psi Operative. But there are certain things you can absolutely do in terms of abilities that are more useful than others. It's difficult for me to say which, because I haven't seen all the abilities, it's difficult for me to say which ones are the best necessarily. But one innate ability that's really useful is Stasis. If you get the Psi Operative with Stasis from the get-go, then you've got a really good character right there, and you shouldn't lose it. Why? Because Stasis can be used and consumes an action, but you can still take an action after, like moving him out of the way, using a grenade, using another ability, taking a shot. So that's extremely useful. Then you can get Stasis Shield, which basically is stasis on allies to protect them from damage. Then there's Solace, which is basically protection against mind control. Then there's Fortress, immune to fire, poison, acid, and explosive damage. Fuse, which blows up explosives that people have. Null Lance, and Void Rift. Now, Null Lance is basically a straight line of damage. It's a lot of damage in a straight line. You can hit quite a lot of enemies with it. Void Rift is a circle, an AoE circle, and it can put a lot. It doesn't do as much damage as Null Lance, but it does have a wider radius, and more importantly, you can put other effects like mind control or panic on an enemy. So that's extremely useful there if you get that. It's a chance-based thing, and enemies can resist that. It does less damage, but it will explode after a turn and do more damage if enemies are still in the field. The AI isn't particularly bright with that. Interestingly enough, Psi Operatives have assault rifles, which are, when you upgrade from the basic weapons to magnetic weapons and then to plasma weapons, the assault rifles are the first that you're going to unlock. So Psi Operatives are really useful with that. Thing is, with Psi Operatives is that you will also need to upgrade his Psi Amp, so that kind of evens it out. Psi Operatives use Psi Amps, which increase their ability. So for instance, it's plus 40 because of the Psi Amp that I have, which is basically the max one, the Alien Psi Amp. And, you can go with default armor, which gives you an extra slot if you want that. You want to go with a grenade or a battle scanner, or, there's various options here. Like I went with a Mimic, which puts a hologram that enemies will attack for a turn. It can die, it has a limited amount of HP, but it's something they'll attack per turn. What you go otherwise, if you want scouting, you get the battle scanner. If you want a grenade, you go with that. You can get an acid grenade or incendiary bomb. Acid is against armor, incendiary is against HP. It will cause enemies to burn. Acid is more effective than burning though, overall. Then typical grenade, then you can go rounds. There's a lot of things. The thing is, a lot of them are random, like grenades, like incendiary or acid, depends on what you get, depends on the drops that you get from enemies, all that. So it's difficult to give you a precise guide with that. Same with weapon upgrades. You generally use what you get. One thing I would strongly recommend is go to the Guerrilla Tactics School and get the bonus, which gives you extra items dropped per enemies if you can get them on a consistent basis. I didn't get it initially, I got it later on, kind of paid the price for it, but I do have plenty of characters with weapon upgrades, full weapon upgrades, though not as ideal as I would want. Anyway, Psi Operatives, it's difficult to control that. In terms of combats, in terms of personal combat sims, I haven't really seen anything that would be useful. You've got dodge, will, HP, and mobility. Mobility is useful for certain characters, HP is useful for other characters. Will would probably be useful for this guy, but he can get the talent that basically gives him close to near immunity from Psi attacks, like mind control from enemies. Anyway, that's Psi Operative, the one that's a bit of a special situation though. In terms of armor, with the Psi Operative, you can go with either mobility or you can go with heavy, ordnance, because you can use certain abilities without ending your turn. So you can have like an exosuit or war suit, where you can use the rocket launcher on that suit and do a lot of damage with that, or just regularly shoot and get more HP. It depends on your preference there. Quite a bit of it, in terms of loadout, depends on your personal preference, how your overall squad is, what kind of items you have overall, all that. There's just some tips I can give with regards to that. Anyway, in terms of the heavy, right, or the Grenadier really, you get 2 grenades, and you can actually get more if you have a certain upgrade. You can get more grenades than just 2 if you get the specific upgrades for him. In terms of weapon upgrades, I'd recommend you get either an clip size. There's one that increases clip size. There's one that increases that gives you free reloads for a mission. A number of free reloads, 1, 2, 3 free reloads, depends on what you're going for. And I would strongly recommend the scope as well with the Grenadier, because that can help them a lot, especially the way I'm going to recommend you build the Grenadier. Now, you do have Launch Grenade as the basic ability. Then you get the choice between Blast Padding and Shredder. Shredder is the ability you want to go for. No discussion, no debate on this particular subject. Why? Because sure, Blast Padding is kind of useful in specific situations, but Shredder will almost always be useful once you start encountering enemies with armor, and you'll encounter them pretty early on, so having an ability that can shred armor is extremely useful, and that's for Corporal. In terms of Sergeant, none of these choices are actually great. I've got people at Demolition, I've got people at Suppression, I really haven't used it that much, and the reason I haven't used it that much is because your Grenadiers generally are going to be shoving grenades, and if they're not going to be shoving grenades, you're going to use them to shred any armor with their heavy machine gun, or you're going to use them to put holo targeting on a target, or something like that. So none of these abilities is useful. It depends on the situation. Demolition is useful when you don't want to use grenades and you just have one enemy and you want to take down his cover, but it's chance-based thing. Suppression will lower the accuracy of an enemy, but that doesn't prevent an enemy from, say, using a grenade or using a special ability that can still do damage. In terms of Lieutenant, you've got Heavy Ordnance, which the grenade in your grenade only slot gains a bonus use, so you get an extra grenade. And then you've got holo targeting, which puts a debuff on target, increasing the aim of other characters against that target. Holo targeting is really the way to go. Sure, it's a Grenadier, he's going to use the grenades a lot, but the way I see it is that having holo targeting helps a lot with other characters, especially with sharpshooters and rangers, just in general with attacks that may do more damage, like Deadeye or Rapid Aim, that decrease accuracy but do more damage, can do a lot more damage than that. So I would recommend holo targeting. Hell, it's actually something that can synergize between 2 Grenadiers, because you can get the following talent, which is Chain Shot, which has an aim loss, but is basically you hitting a target twice with your heavy machine gun. So if you put holo targeting up on an enemy, and then you use Chain Shot, you'll have a higher chance to hit, let alone other classes, right? Volatile Mix is useful earlier on, as I see it. Later on, not so much, because grenade damage is not going to matter all that much later on, as you're going to deal with the enemies that have more and more HP. You're going to deal with things like Armageddons, you're going to deal with things like Sectopods and Gatekeepers, which have a truckload of armor and truckload of HP, so having an ability like Chain Shot, which can do a tremendous amount of damage, and Chain Shot also stacks with holo targeting and Shredder, so basically you can shred a target's armor twice using Shredder, so that works very well. You can get stacking debuffs there with the Grenadier, so that's extremely useful. Then when you're looking at Major, you've got Salvo or Hail of Bullets. Now, Hail of Bullets is a guaranteed hit on a target, but Salvo allows you to fire a grenade, then take another action, be it shooting or throwing another grenade at the target, or suppressing, demolition, whatever you want. This is why I recommend you get a reload or an increased clip size, or both if you want to go with that when it comes to weapon loadouts, because you can use salvo. Then if you're out of ammo, you can use a free reload, or if you have a higher clip size, you will be unlikely to run out of ammo, and you can use something like chain shot or just regular hit. Hail of bullets is useful but consumes a tremendous amount of ammunition, and I don't think it's that useful there. Then finally, kernel rank. Now, when it comes to kernel rank, you've got saturation fire, which is a cone-shaped barrage of bullets at the enemy, at every enemy in an area, and then this is basically kind of like some of the rocket attacks, and then you've got rupture. Now, the problem here is, saturation fire might seem useful. The thing is that by the point that you're going to have characters that are kernels, you're going to be in the end game more often than not. And when you're in the end game, it took me a long time to actually level people up to the kernel rank. Even people that I was using to kill a lot of targets. I dislike the leveling system that's based on kills. They should do something different there. But anyway, the point is, you're going to level slowly, and by the time you're at max level, you're going to be dealing with enemies that have a truckload of HP, and you are going to want to take them down. You're going to want to be able to take down a sectopod easily. Rupture helps tremendously because you can put a rupture on a target, and it's going to crit if it hits. Obviously there's a chance it can miss, but it can crit. And it stacks with Shredder, and it stacks with holo targeting, and it does and the target will take increased damage. So you can use, say, Rupture on target. If it hits, you'll get the armor shredded from one Grenadier. You'll get holo targeting. Then you can use another Grenadier to use Chain Shot to basically finish that target off. That's just how I see it. And I've used this myself in a couple of missions that I've done. So it's extremely useful to actually have Rupture versus Saturation Fire. Saturation Fire just doesn't work given the time you're actually going to get kernel rank. You're going to get it in an end game where you're dealing with enemies that are armored and have a lot of HP. So I don't think Saturation Fire is that useful. And the thing is that Rupture synergizes with other characters and holo targeting. Those two abilities in particular I think are crucial. They synergize with other characters. So for instance, you can look at, just looking at the sniper, for instance. When it comes to the sniper, when it comes to the Grenadier, that is, not the heavy. When it comes to the Grenadier, you can go with whatever armor you want, though I think having the exosuit is more useful than the lighter suit because you get that extra grenade. And that extra grenade, incidentally, on the exosuit actually works with salvo. So if you're using a rocket launch or you're using something like a shredder gun or Shred Storm Cannon, which does tremendous amount of damage and can crush enemies in your path. If you're using this, it will activate salvo. So salvo is extremely useful and makes the Grenadier work well with that kind of armor. But when it comes to sniper, you want to go with the spider suit, which has a grapple hook, or if you're at that point with the wraith suit, which also has a grapple hook. And the reason you want to go with this is the grapple hook does not consume an action, so you can use it to get the height advantage, which increases your accuracy, and then shoot with your sniper round, with your plasma lance, your sniper, whatever. In terms of weapon upgrades, you want to get either expanded magazine or free reloads on your sniper because that helps a lot. Because when you reload, when you're reloading, that consumes an action, so you won't be able to shoot your sniper after that. So kind of wasting that reload actually. Then you've got whatever you want. You can get a hair trigger, you can get increased critical chance, or you can get increased aim. Doesn't really matter, but what does matter is that you get either increased clip size or an increased or some free reloads for your sniper. I think clip size works well, especially late game with some of the higher upgrades. Anyway, as a sharpshooter, your sniper has squad sight by default, and then you get the choice on the corporal level between long watch and return fire. Long watch is something I gained on pretty much every sniper in the early game, and I found it completely fucking useless. You do want to keep your people close enough together, so it's not going to be that useful. I regret actually taking it on a lot of characters. Whereas return fire, yeah, it's situational, but it's better than, not having nothing. It's not a great choice either way. Then you've got Deadeye versus Lightning Hands. And although having a free pistol hit is useful. You can still get quick draw, just a point. You can get quick draw, which will allow you to shoot your pistol twice if you do get it. So Deadeye is a better choice because Deadeye can do a significant amount of damage. Yes, there is an aim penalty, but that's where the holo targeting of the Grenadier comes into play. You use the Grenadier, destroy the cover, then if you have salvo, you put holo targeting or use another Grenadier to put holo targeting on target, then you take a Deadeye shot and you use the height advantage with the suit as well. And the death from above is also useful here, if you have the suit. If you don't have the suit, quick draw is kind of useful, but once you do get the suit, you might want to respect your sharpshooters to get death from above on all of them, because it's useful. If you don't have the suit, there's a very good reason for getting quick draw, because moving characters to actually take advantage of the height can be problematic in a lot of maps. When you have the grapple hook, that becomes so much easier, so much more workable, and it's just worth doing. But when you don't have it, quick draw is a valid option, but once you get the death from above is the better choice as far as I see it. Then there's Killzone versus Face Off. Killzone has some potential, but I think Face Off is the better choice overall. I've used Killzone in certain places. It has helped me in certain situations, but it's very situational where you'll be using Face Off more often than you will be using Killzone, and that's just how I see it. Then finally, Steady Hands versus Aim. Aim is something if you use Hunker Down, which quite frankly you shouldn't. If you're in a situation where you're hunkering down, you probably should just shoot with the pistol, unless your sniper has some problems in terms of staying alive. But generally, you want to be aggressive, as I see it. So having Steady Hands is a better choice, especially with the grapple, with the suit. Getting at the height advantage, you will get a height advantage. You'll gain squad sight. You'll be able to shoot a lot of enemies. You won't move. That's just how the sniper works. You don't want to move all that much because you lose your ability to shoot the sniper. So, Steady Hands is useful in that. Then finally, there's Serial versus Fanfire. Now, Fanfire might have potential early game, but because this is, I was talking with the Grenadier, this is something you gain very late on in the game where you're dealing with enemies that have a lot of HP. Serial is the far better choice. It's not even a competition here as I see it. Serial allows you, if you have a higher clip size or if you have free reloads, it's basically you can kill tons of enemies. You can use AoE abilities with your Grenadiers, or you can use exosuit equipped characters to do a lot of AoE damage, and then you can finish them off with your sniper and you can keep shooting. I did something amazing in the Advent Network Tower mission. I killed a lot of enemies using this. It's a very useful ability. I don't think Fanfire can compare to that. Pistols are useful, but they're not worth giving this up as far as I see it, to be quite frank with you. So, that's not to say that focusing on pistols to an extent on the sniper is useless. It's just I find it better to focus on using the sniper versus the pistol. That's just my take on that situation with the sniper. It works, and Deadeye synergizes with holo targeting. Serial also works with holo targeting, etc., etc. Right, and it also works with the higher end ability on the Grenadier as well. Once you get Rupture, that stacks with that will help with Serial to get more kills because you'll do more damage and you'll be able to take down enemies. And that's also where Shredder works into this. Obviously there is some value with other builds as well with these two. Okay, Specialists. Now this is where you actually have valid choices regardless of what you're doing. I'm not actually going to use a specialist for the final mission. I don't necessarily see a reason for it, but depends on what you're going for. You get 8 protocol, which increases the chance to dodge on a target, and you can use 8 protocol without while still having an action remaining. Then you've got medical protocol. You can still equip medkits even if you don't have medical protocol, but this allows you to heal characters from a distance without consuming an. Basically, you can send your drone to heal a target and still shoot afterwards, and that's important. But this depends on choice. I have a 50-50 split between medical protocol and combat protocol on my specialist. I have no other kernel specialist except this guy, but if I did, I'd probably go with 50-50 between restoration and capacitor discharge. It's basically damage versus support here for these two abilities. When it comes to Revival Protocol versus Haywire Protocol, the only thing that's dangerous out of all these effects is Unconscious, and that's not worth a talent. Sure, getting a character unconscious sucks because you can't revive them, unless you get some item that does this. I'm not sure if there is. I think there is, actually. But anyway, Revival Protocol versus Haywire Protocol. You'll be dealing with a lot of mechs. There will be a lot of hackable objects, so having Haywire Protocol is useful. You might get one or two, a minority of specialists if you have a lot of them that have it, but it generally is worth it to get Haywire Protocol far more so. It saved my life so many times while playing this game on Legendary Man, so it's actually quite useful. Then there's Field Medic versus Scanning Protocol. If you're not going with Medical Protocol, you might go with Scanning Protocol, but I don't, there's still a potential there for Field Medic. So just keep in mind, you might end up in a situation where you're not using medkits at all, so in that case, having a Scanning Protocol and not having to take a Battle Scanner with you is useful. Not that you necessarily need a Battle Scanner all that much, to be honest with you, after a certain point. Then there's Covering Fire versus Threat Assessment. The thing with threat assessment is that it's putting Overwatch on a target that you're using a protocol on. Is that really useful? I mean, it's far more situational than Covering Fire, which you are always going to get. And Covering Fire also stacks with Ever Vigilant, which, Covering Fire is, Overwatch shots can now be triggered by any enemy actions. And the thing is, if you spend all your actions on moves, you are granted an automatic Overwatch shot at the end of the turn. So if you want Overwatch, go for Ever Vigilant with Covering Fire, and that's great there. But I don't think Guardian or Threat Assessment are that particularly useful. But you can specialize between Medic or Damage Dealer with the specialists. Finally, the Ranger. The Ranger is your primary damage dealer, and you should get up close and personal with them. You can go either a Blade Master or use stealth or use mobility, basically. That's what it ultimately comes down to. I think a mix of talents from both sides is very healthy here, as I personally see it. I don't think melee is as useful as it is initially. Like in the early game, melee Blade Master is useful because you can do a lot of damage, in particular in regards to sectoids, which you'll face predominantly in the early game. But beyond that, Respecting to Phantom is better because even in missions where you don't start with stealth, the character will still start with stealth, so you can still use him as a scout, you can still use him to get a jump on someone, and it works well with Shadow Strike. Having Shadow Step is very situational. Shadow Strike is something that can give you a huge boost. Like, you can get some insane crits. I had a 104% chance to crit because of this talent. So getting Shadow Strike is extremely useful, and it works well with Phantom, right? There. Then finally, Lieutenant, Conceal versus Run and Gun. Here I'm a bit divided, actually, though I think Run and Gun is better because Run and Gun you can use more than just once in a mission, whereas Conceal is just once per mission. That's not to say that Conceal isn't useful in any way, shape, or form, but you want to use Run and Gun to get up close and personal, or move, or say for instance you want to get closer but you're out of ammo, and you want to reload, so you use Run and Gun, you move to a place, you move to cover, or you move closer to a target, you reload, and then you take the shot. I've done that quite a few times. It's very useful to do so. None of my Rangers have ammo upgrades like clip size or free reloads. I've always gone for laser sights to increase their critical chance, or hair triggers for free actions, or repeaters to get instant kills. That's extremely useful as I see it. Oh, speaking about repeaters, you might want to give one to someone who has a chain shot, because chain shot can also trigger the repeater, which means that one of those two hits can actually kill an enemy. So that's extremely useful there. I use exosuits, though you might want to go for extra mobility. I use exosuits because Rangers are melee characters, and it's nice to have ranged ability, a more long range ability with the rocket or the shredder cannon or the plasma cannon, which is what I have equipped plasma blaster, which is what I have on right. The plasma blaster is kind of like a null lance. It's a directed energy blast, and I generally go with grenades as well. Just being able to destroy cover, all that. Now, in terms of other talents for the ranger, just to finish this whole thing up, Implacable versus Bladestorm. Bladestorm is very situational. Implacable is something that you're going to use a lot. The way I play is that my rangers are generally the characters that I use to kill targets, and it's because of two things, Implacable and Untouchable. With Implacable, you get an extra move when you kill an enemy. With Untouchable, a single enemy attack after you kill a target will not hit you. So, you want to go directly in the front of a sectopod and kill an enemy that's near that sectopod and basically become immune and soak the hit that the sectopod will do. Like, basically, when you're in melee range of an enemy that can do a melee attack, more often than not, from my experience, they're going to go for that melee attack. Deep cover is not that particularly useful because you want to be attacking almost every turn. If you're not attacking every turn, that's just kind of how it is. And really, it's like, what, hunker down automatically? You can do that yourself, right? You can use run and gun and hunker down. So I don't think that's a particularly useful talent. Then it comes down to Rapid Fire versus Reaper. Reaper could have potential, but again, this is one of those things where you're dealing with enemies that have a lot of HP, and Rapid Fire, although it does have a negative aim, you still have hollow targeting, and unlike Chain Shot, where if you miss the first hit, the second one won't go, with Rapid Fire, it doesn't matter. Both hits will go, and one of them, more often than not, is going to hit. So you will more often than not have a guaranteed hit, most situations, unless you have a terrible chance to hit. But you will also have a high chance of 2 hits dealing tremendous damage, which can kill an enemy, which just to me seems more useful than Reaper. I used quite a bit of melee in the early game, but after that I stopped. I haven't used melee weapons in a long time in this playthrough in my playthrough of XCOM 2. So just something to bear in mind on that particular subject. Hope this was useful to you. Hope this guide, so to speak, was useful to you that are interested in this. When it comes to specific items, to specific characters, I feel that the Mimic Beacon should go on a character that can use something else, like a specialist who can heal or put aid protocol on someone, because the Mimic Beacon consumes all your actions. It's not something you can just throw around and then you can do something else. No, it consumes all your actions. So it works on either Psi Operative, mine can use stasis and then throw a Mimic Beacon if there's still enemies left, or can shoot someone else. In terms of aim, it should be either, these tracer rounds increase aim. It depends on your luck with regards to this. Aim increases should go for either sharpshooters or grenadiers. I could give my guy here dragon rounds, which do extra damage and can set the target to flame, which is extremely useful. Alright, so quite a few things. Battle scanners and the like go for specialists or characters, that have more targets, that have support abilities. They can use a support ability and then still do something else. Anyway, Costin here on Serious Gaming, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and stay tuned for me finishing the playthrough of XCOM 2 on Legend Iron Man.